I thought divorcing my husband would be the hardest thing I'd ever have to do. I was wrong. Leaving him was difficult, but getting him to accept that the marriage was over, that became a nightmare I never imagined possible. My name is Sarah, and I was married to Daniel for 7 years. When we first met, he was everything I thought I wanted. He was charming, funny, ambitious, and incredibly attentive. He remembered little things about me that even my closest friends forgot. Looking back, I realized some of those things weren't romantic. They were warning signs. Daniel always wanted to know where I was. At first, I thought it was because he cared. If I went out with friends, he'd text, "Where are you?" Then, "Who are you with?" Then, "Send me a picture." If I didn't answer quickly, I'd come home to a dozen missed calls. Whenever I confronted him, he'd apologize. "I'm just scared something will happen to you." And because I loved him, I believed him. Until the controlling behavior became impossible to ignore. He didn't like certain friends. He didn't like me staying late at work. He didn't like me talking to male colleagues. Eventually, he even started questioning why I needed to spend so much time with my own family. The final straw came after an argument that made me realize I couldn't spend another year living like that. I asked for a divorce. Daniel stared at me for several seconds, then he laughed. Not an angry laugh, a calm one. "You're not leaving me." I told him I was serious. He shook his head. "You'll change your mind." I didn't. 3 months later, our divorce was finalized. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. The first strange thing happened 2 weeks after I moved into my new apartment. Someone left flowers outside my door. There was no name, just a note. "I know you better than anyone." I immediately knew who it was. Daniel. I threw the flowers away. The next week, another package appeared. Then another. I blocked his number. He contacted me through email. I blocked that too. Then he started using different numbers. Every time I changed my routine, somehow he seemed to know. I began feeling like I was being watched. One evening, I came home and noticed something strange. My bedroom window was slightly open. I knew I'd closed it before leaving. I checked the apartment carefully and found nothing missing. But on my kitchen table was a photograph. It was a picture of me walking into my workplace. It had clearly been taken from across the street. On the back were 4 words: "You shouldn't ignore me." I was terrified. I contacted my family and reported what was happening. But Daniel insisted he had nothing to do with it. And strangely enough, there wasn't enough evidence to prove otherwise. For several weeks, nothing happened. Then I met someone new. His name was Michael. He was kind, respectful, and completely different from Daniel. We started dating slowly. I deliberately kept the relationship private because I didn't want Daniel to know. But somehow, he found out. One morning, I received a message from an unknown number. "So, this is who replaced me." My heart dropped. I hadn't told anyone about Michael, not even most of my friends. I immediately called the police. That night, something happened that changed everything. I received an email containing dozens of photographs. Pictures of Michael, pictures of me, pictures of us together. And then I saw one photograph that made my blood run cold. It was a picture of Michael standing outside my apartment. The photograph had been taken that same day. I knew then that this wasn't simply my ex refusing to accept our divorce. Someone had been following us. I showed everything to the police. They investigated Daniel's phone records and eventually discovered something shocking. Daniel had been paying someone to follow me. But that wasn't the biggest surprise. The person he hired wasn't a stranger. It was someone I knew, someone I'd trusted. My best friend, Lisa. I couldn't believe it. When police questioned her, she finally confessed. Daniel had contacted her months before our divorce was finalized. He told her I was unstable. He told her I was planning to take everything from him. And he convinced her that he was simply trying to protect himself. Lisa had been giving him information about me, where I went, who I spoke to, when I traveled, even details about my new apartment. But then she admitted something else. Daniel hadn't just been trying to get me back. He had been preparing something. He had created fake accounts in my name and was sending messages to people pretending to be me. He wanted my friends and family to think I was becoming unstable. He wanted to destroy my reputation. And if I started dating someone else, he planned to make sure they believed I was dangerous. The whole time, he had been trying to isolate me again. Fortunately, the evidence was enough for authorities to intervene. Daniel was eventually ordered to stay away from me. Lisa disappeared from my life completely. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. But here's the part that still bothers me. About a year after everything ended, I received one final letter. There was no return address. Inside was a photograph of Daniel. On the back, he had written, "You still don't understand. I was the only person who ever truly loved you." I tore the letter up, because by then I finally understood something. Love doesn't make you afraid. Love doesn't make you feel watched. And love doesn't require you to give up your freedom just to prove you're loyal. I had spent 7 years confusing control with love. I wasn't going to make that mistake again. If you were in my position, would you have forgiven Lisa for helping your ex-husband? Or would you have ended the friendship forever?